say and do would be pleasing to you, and thank you for the privilege of representing our people the way that we do. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yes, sir. Rex Jordan. E.O. Smith.
Here.
Keith Austin.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Joe Byrd. Julia Coates. Here. Sean Crittenden.
Here.
Joe Deere. Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Kanan Duncan. Darrell Legg.
Here.
Wes Snowfire. Dora Petskowski. Here. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Mary Bakershaw. Janice Taylor. Here. Victoria Vesquez. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Need approval of the minutes from June the 14th.
Make a motion they be approved.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Passed. Management Resources, Mr. David Moore. Yes.
Good afternoon. Y'all have our report. If I can answer any questions, I'll try. Just one thing that's not in there. We know the COVID cases are kind of on the rise, so we've started ramping up our, COVID sanitation again, even more aggressive than we have. We have never stopped it, but we're going to ramp it up again a little more.
Is there any questions for David? Mr. Dobbins.
David, on the Durban Feeling Center, when is the rehab starting? How long will it last, and how much is it going to cost?
It's probably about 2 weeks out from starting fence and job trailer and getting bid packages out. Right now, the estimate is right around 15 million, and it's about a 1-year project once we start.
15 million?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for David? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up will be Real Estate Services, Ginger Reeves.
She here?
Yes, I believe she is.
Good afternoon. I believe you have a copy of my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Ginger?
Hi, Ginger.
Ginger? Oh, go ahead.
Ginger, on land, I don't know if it'd have to go through the housing authority, this question or not, but on our citizens that have some land that they get a house built on, they're asked to take their land out of restricted status to be able to build a house on it, correct?
I believe so, but you'd have to ask the housing authority on
Oh,
that. And what
okay.
funds are being used?
Okay, yeah, because that was the thing, is there a requirement under restricted status on your side that makes them have to take that part out in order to be able to build on it?
Not on our part. There
Okay,
isn't.
I'll ask them whenever they come up. Appreciate it.
Right,
Appreciate
but
you.
there is, it would require removal of restrictions for that acre.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Ginger, on individual restricted land, that is, the lands that are landlocked, is there any way that we can have the tribe, once we identify those, lease those lands so we can protect those from intruders? Because a lot of those families aren't able to really come together to fight that battle. But to me, it would legitimize it if it
Right.
was leased out to the tribe. Does that make sense?
It does. A lot of times we try to identify those for hunting purposes, and we will, a lot of the restricted, the people who had joined those restricted tracts will work a deal with them to lease those for hunting purposes.
Okay. All right.
And we could do that. I don't think that there would be a problem, but a lot of those tracts are leased for hunting purposes
Okay.
because that they are landlocked.
If some of those tracts are still not probated, do you just have to have a representative of that tribe to come and do that? Or how do you take care of that issue?
Yes, if it needs probated, they just have to come to the office, one of the family members to come to the office, fill out a probate application, or we can send it to them or email it to them.
Okay.
And once that's done, we're pretty caught up on our probates, actually. I couldn't have said that, 5 years ago, but we're pretty caught up on our probates. And all they need to do is fill out a probate application. We'll do all the research, get the research done, and send it on to the attorney for filing.
That's good news. Well, that's good news, Junior. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, any other questions? Harley?
Yeah, Ginger, I have two questions. One is the Oak Hill Community Building there. Is it fully been transferred to the nation now at Oak Hill Piney?
No,
So
we're
it's
still,
still-
we're still waiting
Is that
on
right?
central office on that one.
Okay.
Yes, we're working, we check on it monthly.
Okay. All right. The other question is, I don't know if it's a question or not, but Councilor Byrd had brought up a interesting point about restricted land. And I know this one, and I think you're familiar with it. If you remember, people were using this restricted property next door to them. And there's been some properties that were setting out, like Speaker Byrd had said, about in the middle of nowhere. But this one particular property, we did help the heirs do a lease. That way, it kind of protects those people that own the restricted land. If a certain person, say, had land out in the middle of nowhere and the adjacent landowner went in and fenced that, then at some point in time, they could claim that.
It keeps them from adversely possessing.
Yeah,
it,
adverse
yes.
position, or possession. I'm wondering if we could not do a little more protection and see if those restricted landowners would be willing to lease it to the adjacent landowner. That way, if they would, $100 a year, that would keep
We do that.
adverse. Oh, you do
We
that?
do
Okay,
that,
okay, well, you're
yes.
ahead of the game, okay.
We do that, and that does keep that from being adversely
Okay,
possessed.
all
We
right.
do that on many
Okay,
tracks.
good deal. Okay, I didn't know that would do it. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Any other questions for Ginger? Yes.
Hey, Ginger, it's been quite a while back, but I'd ask you about, I believe Harley did too, about a lot in J. It would be on the corner of First Street and Monroe. And if it's something that we need to talk to, you could just brief me after the meeting, but, people were putting their property on that restricted land, and they put a permanent garage on there, with a pole barn type garage, and it's in the ground. Is there something saying that if they leave it there so long that this is going to become theirs, and is that something that is a possibility if they do that?
That's something that is that the same one I think it's the same one we were talking about. We did a lease with it, and therefore
Okay.
there's no way that they can adversely possess it.
Okay, good, okay, all right, thank you,
We try to stay on top of those, but, some may slip through the cracks.
sure, thank you.
If someone has a fence built on their landlocked, so they notify you? How long if that fence has been there a while, what is the time limit, what I'm wondering? If that
By the
fence has been there
state,
a
it's
while.
15 years, but, it all depends if they file a quiet title action. But if they do in fact file a quiet title action, all quiet titles will come through our office for research. So that's how it's protected in that manner.
Okay.
But you should encourage any of your constituents, if they do own or they have an interest in restricted land, to contact our office.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Any other questions for Ginger? Yes, ma'am.
I just would like her to stick around for the business side of, that we have.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ginger. Environmental programs, I think Chad's gonna take it. Tom is not here.
Good afternoon. I believe you have Tom's report. If you have any questions on any of those items, I can take them.
Any questions on environmental?
How's Tom doing? Haven't seen him in a while.
Tom's doing well. So he's been spending a lot of time at our solid waste landfill, helping with our master plan planning and helping optimize some of those operations out there. In order to run a landfill, you have to have a number of certifications in order to comply with like best practices, and he happens to have all of those, so he's been a huge help in helping us kind of move things along and rearrange things out there.
Yeah, he's a good hand. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions on the environmental? Okay, you wanna go ahead? Whoop, just a second. Who's got one? Nora?
Yes, I was just going to ask about the clean water program. He's got four locations listed on here where they've done water sampling. Do you know if any of those have come back yet, or?
I don't know that if we've actually received the test results back. So my understanding is that particular program is funded from a grant from the EPA where we monitor certain sensitive watersheds and go out and collect the samples ourselves and then return those back to the EPA for just water quality monitoring in the region. I'm not sure if those results have been received yet, but I'll find out and reach out to you after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Any other questions?
Do you have just a minute after the meeting? I'll holler at you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you wanna go ahead with some resources?
Yeah, if I may, kind of a brief report today. I always like to give an update to this body of our electric vehicle progress. It's a pretty big project that we've rolled out across our group, and I mentioned maybe the last meeting or the meeting before that we had submitted our application for the last round of funding from the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust. We anticipated receiving about $2 million, but after the analysis and the allocations, we were awarded about little over 3.5 million, which is almost double what we had anticipated, and that brings our grand total through this program to just over $8.2 million for EV infrastructure in the region, and that is a material figure, a substantial sum, more than we anticipated. There was a lot of tribes that ultimately dropped out of the application process because these projects are not easy to get off the ground, and COVID was particularly rough on some of those tribes, so that probably is the reason why we received a larger allocation. With that being said, we have completely closed out the first round of funding. There's 4 total, and fulfilled all of our reporting requirements to the trust, and now we're moving into phase 2 and 3 of our strategic plan with some alterations to that plan coming in consideration of the additional funding that we received. A couple of the projects that we have moving along are our level 3 charger at Sequoia schools. I think we've already started construction on that. I mentioned last time that we anticipated construction out front here at the solar canopy, right here in front of the complex, and we've since completed that and powered up a doubling the number of charging stations we have. So there's now 16 open and available to the public, and we continue to see that increased demand. So it was certainly timely and necessary. And again, all of this work is done through the grant that we received and the continuing funding that we received from the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust. We're in the process of finalizing development of charging stations in West Siloam Springs and also potentially a solar canopy at the Hard Rock. So that would be kind of our phase 2, and then still looking at the figures on our phase 3 and 4, and looking at maybe replacing some additional diesel vehicles that we have throughout the Cherokee Nation that meet the certain requirements, since we have a little bit more money than we anticipated. That's the primary update to kind of our electric vehicle program. On the seed bank, we had a lot of rain over this spring and early summer, so we have completed all of our plantings for our heirloom garden. So looking hopefully to get a good yield this year, and also considering some changes to the garden over the course of this summer that might help us keep up with demand, because it grows year over year over year. Those are the primary items that I wanted to kind of report on. So if you have any questions about that or other topics, I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Way down there. Yeah.
Yeah, Chad, just thank you for your kind of leadership and keeping us in the know on the Watts project. I didn't know if you'd want to expound any today about that. It's an exciting project for for that part of Adair County, so.
Sure, yeah, so you
Feel
might
like
have,
doing
you
it.
might have saw a media release earlier this month where we did a tour of the Woco Whitewater Project near Watts, Oklahoma. This project is funded in large part by the Walton Foundation in conjunction with GRDA, which is going to manage the project over the term of it, over its life. In that area, years ago, there used to be a pretty substantial lake called Lake Francis. That was a pretty big recreational draw for the region, and I want to say it was back in the 90s. There was a dam failure at that particular site. It also had produced hydroelectricity, which is it's similar to a lot of the lakes in the region, Grand Lake, where we have part of the McClellan-Clover, Arkansas River navigation system, that whole initiative back in the earlier part of this century. But it's a pretty amazing thing to see, and I think whenever we went out there, it kind of put it in perspective. But what it is it's a whitewater park that has some high-speed rafting for both adults and children. It's going to be free for folks in the area. It's right near the Arkansas border. It's tens of millions of dollars worth of investment, and GRDA is going to manage it over the life of the project. And Councilor Duncan and Councilor Crittenden appreciate. They asked me to share their appreciation for your contributions on some of those road improvements out there. It's probably halfway near complete construction. I'm not sure when the date is. I know they've had some material delays and rains and things of that nature, but it's the economic impact to that part of Adair County is going to be huge. And from what I'm being told, it's going to be in the top 5 destination class water parks in the country. So it's something to see for sure. And I'm glad that we could participate and help them accomplish that goal.
Mary?
Hi, Chad. Any news about hunting and fishing license for the at-large?
We're still having that conversation. We actually met in person for the first time this year. Most of our conversations had been, telecom or through virtual platforms, but we had a meeting earlier this month, or sorry, the middle of last month, to talk about some tone setting and boundaries, and those were the priorities that I've mentioned every month that we've been pushing out, and so I'm hopeful that we can get to that goal, and the conversation is moving more rapidly than it has been in the past. So hopefully I'll have something to report very soon on that.
More rapidly than in the past. Well, this is good news because I don't think it's moved much in the past. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
We sure appreciate you looking into that for us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Joe?
Hey, Chad, it's good seeing you at Intertribal.
Absolutely.
We sat through that resource meeting, and it was pretty good to see the other tribes, what they were doing, along with our charging station and the meat processing plant.
Uh-huh.
And it looks like we're still just a little bit above what everybody else is doing as far as square footages and money we get. But I liked how you did a quick response when you sort of got called out of the audience. And, because it let people know that our guy is leading the way. He knows pretty much everything going on. But I was just going to say that was a great job in just addressing everybody in that meeting on such a short notice, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. So
Thank you. I didn't want to go on the record there saying that we're doing something bigger and better, so we just let it be.
I'll say it. I'll say it.
Wes?
Hey, do we have an annual funding agreement with the BIA for forestry?
We do receive some amount of forestry funds. I don't know that it's a big figure, but it's dedicated towards programs within the Natural Resources Group. Yes.
And it's like I think it's 2.1 million. I think whenever I looked it up, I'm not 100% certain. Is that something that we can't use for funding and building an agreement on the forestry of the timbers, the pines in Delaware County?
So, this issue we've kind of talked about at length over the last year. It's really a administrative issue with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. You see leases come across with some frequency where we sometimes waive valuation and we waive, other aspects that is within the tribe's discretion by way of a resolution, but it's a little bit different specifically for timber permits or timber permits from the BIA. The particular part of the regulations don't allow the BIA to issue a permit that waives any of those items. And the BIA, as you can imagine, is reluctant to approve a permit in this case that would require us to pay money for the resource to be removed from trust property. A lot of that, I think, stems from, there's quite a bit of litigation for trust violations by the BIA over the years. And so what we've asked them to do is create an exception in this particular case, because the economics of the pine trees in that particular area are such that it cannot be profitable. So what we did to try to resolve that problem was seek additional funding from the USDA to offset those losses. And we have to, instead of getting paid X dollars per ton, you have to pay X dollars per ton to have them removed, because there's no sawmills close, and there's a number of other factors. So it's not so much of an issue of the funding, because we do have a USDA grant specifically for this project. It's an issue of getting the BIA to do something, one, that would be, on paper, a financial loss to the tribe. And just to be honest, in this particular region, the BIA has never approved a forest permit in modern history, because the timber industry's died over the years. So I don't know that it's a specific funding issue with the Forestry Service, but more so a very nuanced and unique administrative issue for the BIA. And we've submitted our request for a permit. We filled out, I think there was several hundred pages, and we filled out our part of it, and we're waiting for them to return their part of it. But we've been kind of in that holding pattern for some time.
How much of a loss, do you know how much of a loss that's estimated to have to go in there and do a thinning and a clearing to make it profitable?
I don't have that information in front of me. I know
Okay.
it's a pretty substantial, which is why we acquired the grant from the USDA.
If you could get that for me, that'd be great, so I could look at it, just to have a full wherewithal on it. And then, I guess something that, last night I noticed on social media, that there's something that all of our citizens, I think, have either wanted to go see or have gone and seen. And I know it's set on private, it's technically a private property, because it's given over to a nonprofit, the organization for land conservation, but the bass on the Illinois River. I guess over the years, people have gotten worse at leaving trash, and I think there was some drug activity, but they currently shut down the access to that, and you'll be getting a fine if you walk over to the bass. And I think that's a special thing. I think we even had something maybe on OCO TV or one of our, I think maybe Cherokee Phoenix did a write-up on it of the significance to that in our history. But saying all that, one of the things that I had brought up, especially with all the lands that we do have, and now we're trying to create a hunting preserve, what have we looked at in regards to like a parks and recreation department, to where we have hired people that go out and do nothing besides patrol the land and protect it, and also enforce any kind of laws that we make of regulations on these bodies?
So when you say the baths, I presume you're referring to the bathtub rocks in Cherokee County?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that particular property, I mean, is owned by the J.T. Nickel Family Nature and Wildlife Preserve, which is about 17,000 acres of contiguous property there. And I think it's managed by the Nature Conservancy, which maintains millions of acres across the world of property for conservation. And so that property is privately held, and it's a remarkable gift for northeastern Oklahoma to have 17,000 acres of that pristine property set aside for mixed use, both public and private. They have walking trails that are open to the public, and the bathtub rocks, I believe, have been open since the early 2000s. But due to vandalism and things of that nature, they ultimately chose to close it down, which is their decision. It's their private property. There's been other lands within the Nature Conservancy and the Nichols Preserve that they've held open and had to close for periods of time to basically support their mission of conservation of the area. Now, when you refer to Cherokee Nation parks, I think if you recall the Cherokee Nation, what the title was, the Cherokee Nation Park, Wildlands Fishing and Hunting Preserve Act of 2021, which was passed by this body earlier this year. I think the effective date was around March of 2021. It contemplates a number of different things, whether it be conservation lands, whether it be hunting and fishing preserve lands, and it also contemplates public parks for Cherokee citizens. Specifically referenced in there is one of our largest parks that we currently have, which is the Cherokee Nation National Park in Stanislaus. So yeah, that is something that the framework is currently under evaluation and review, which is what my department works on, and we have been, especially over the last couple of months, trying to take a survey of what tribal lands we have and see where there's a need, and see where it fits in with the greater scheme of our land management, not just for recreation purposes, but also for conservation and food sustainability.
Yeah, that's good. I just didn't know far as when we might see some development on there. I know when talking about the Nickel Preserve and this being a privately held entity, I know Mr. Nickel, they can't have hands on to it, so it's set up in a nonprofit. I know that we give as a tribe charitable contributions all the time to nonprofits. It might be something that, the administration could reach out to the nonprofit and say, hey, is there something resource that we can offer to help open that back up? Because it is a significant resource to the area that people like to go see. And that way, maybe we could work together on that. That was something that I know I've even suggested with one of the state reps that's a possibility of.
To that point, we do provide, is my understanding that we do provide a financial support to the Nature Conservancy. I know we have a really good relationship and at times partnerships with the Nichols Preserve, the Nature Conservancy on their initiatives. And I know I've worked with folks over there, and I know that over the past we have made some financial contributions because it's such a remarkable gift for this part of our reservation.
Okay, good. That's great then, so we should be able to reach out to them and find out if there's something we could work on, so appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Hey, Chad, have we looked into having the Cherokee Landing maybe turned over to us if there's ever an opportunity to acquire that? Since the state has really tried to manage it, it has gone downhill. The restrooms and just the park area, the RV area, it really needs some updated resources there. And I thought this might be a good time to at least see what the status is. If they ever want to turn it over, let Cherokee Nation take it over, and we'll show them how a park's supposed to be run.
Sure, and when we've had some preliminary conversations, I know when you, and this just impacts a lot of areas of the state of Oklahoma, but when you look at their annual budgeting process, they routinely cut their outdoor recreation programs. I know that this last legislative session, which has since closed, there was a bill sponsored or proposed that would allow the parks, the State Park Service to transition those properties, or some amount of properties, over to nonprofits, local governments, tribal governments. But I don't believe that bill made it out of committee, and I think that bill was designed to kind of bridge a little legal hurdle that they have on the way the state disposes of property. But that is some conversations we've had, at a very preliminary level. And it's somewhat complicated by the failure of that bill to come across the legislative session.
Good. Well, with our good rapport with the governor of Oklahoma, maybe we can have somebody from our office come there and finalize that negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wes?
Yeah, just to follow that up, I'm glad that Speaker Byrd brought that back up, because it's something of concern in my district. Cherokee Landing, since I was a kid, has always been free, and they just started this year charging $10 a car. And so, seeing as probably the bulk of the people that visited there when I was growing up were Cherokee citizens, they still say there's a good traffic flow, but that's where they've started at. And I know up in Delaware County, GRDA's taken over state parks up there, and I think that's something, since that's already happened, that's a framework for us to possibly go ahead and take over some of these state parks down here. So, but Speaker Byrd, I'm glad you brought that up. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Chad? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Old business, none pending, new business. CEO, would you like to take that, please?
Yes, it's a resolution authorizing Cherokee Nation to negotiate and/or advertise for bid to lease tribal units on fee or trust land. I'll put that in form of a motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions?
I just want some explanation. What we're accomplishing with this, Ginger. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I just want some clarity.
Sure. This is our 5-year agriculture bid cycle that's coming up. This lease will begin January the 1st, 2022, and will end December the 31st, 2026. We have 80 tribal trust units and 5 tribal fee units that will be bid. We're asking for the bond to be waived pursuant to Code of Regulations. We can get that bond waived with the tribal resolution. This helps the Cherokee farmers and ranchers who may not have that additional money to get a bond. Also, we are requesting a waiver of valuation for the best interest of the tribe. We could possibly be spending $3,000 to $5,000 per tract, per lease, for an appraisal if we were to go that direction. This is just to appraise the land for each packet.
So essentially, what you're saying is, we have our own real estate department, we work in real estate, we know what's a reasonable fee to charge. Why would we pay somebody else to tell us what's a reasonable fee? Is that?
With each lease, we send a packet over to the BIA because most of these are trust properties. In our packet, we include, and on any business lease or any lease, it is included our lease, an appraisal, a categorical exclusion, and various other documents, and that would just be taking the appraisal out of the equation due to the expense of it for us.
Am I correct that it is more of a formality, that we do not feel like it's necessary? We know what this is worth and
Yes, ma'am.
what's a fair lease amount? Okay,
Yes,
and then as far as the bonding goes, there's no way that the tribe could be held liable for something if the tenant is not bonded. You don't see any liability issues with?
No, we have never bonded them. As far as I know over the past 10 years, the past 2 cycles, we have never required their bonding.
So we've always waived it, so
Yes.
this is nothing new? Okay.
Yes, and this is just a formality for our leases that are going to be sent over, our 85 leases.
Harley?
Ginger, and I'm pretty sure that on our leases, does it specifically say what they can do on those
Yes.
property that they lease?
It's about a 10-page lease, yes.
So a leasee could not go in and start raising marijuana?
Oh, no, no, everything's covered on it.
Okay.
How many head they can graze on, everything is covered on it.
Yeah, I thought it was, because I looked at those leases before. Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
sir.
Any other questions? Yes.
I was just gonna mention that I think Ginger needs us to go to full council this evening.
Yes.
That would be great.
Wes?
So nothing's changed in this one compared to the past 2 times you said we passed a resolution like this?
No,
Okay.
nothing's changed.
And then far as the advertisement goes, on where these tracks are coming available for lease, can a citizen just walk into the real estate office and see where these tracks are gonna be located at
They
that
can do
releasing?
that, and they can call us. We would refer them to the Cherokee.org website under the maps, and we could direct them how to get there.
Okay, perfect, all right. And,
Yes.
and then one more question, do these bids get reported publicly, like on how much the amount was for each track?
They will be posted.
Okay.
They will be posted.
All right,
yeah.
appreciate it, thank you.
One more. On those 80 units, what percentage of those you think are bid or by our tribal members, are given to our tribal members?
We have a Cherokee preference on all of our leases, and I can't think of any right off that are not tribal members, or, tribal citizens.
Good, all right, very good, Ginger. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, we got a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
The next tentative meeting will be August the 9th, at 2 o'clock. I need one more motion.